Welcome back to Chapter 3, Situations that can lead to contaminating food. Food handlers can contaminate food when they have a foodborne illness, have wounds or boils that contain a pathogen, sneeze or cough, have contact with a person who is ill, use the restroom and do not wash their hands, which is called the fecal-oral route of contamination, and have symptoms such as diarrhea, vomiting, or jaundice. And jaundice is a yellowing of the skin or eyes. Managers must focus on the following: creating personal hygiene policies, training food handlers on personal hygiene policies and retraining them regularly, modeling correct behavior, that's very important, supervising food safety practices, and revising personal hygiene policies when laws or science change. Hand washing must take place in a designated hand washing sink and must be monitored. Hands must never be washed in sinks designated for food prep, dishwashing, or discarding wastewater. Now in this section, on this frame, I want you to pay attention to this. You will be asked about that, and you will be asked about this. Okay? And there's another thing right in here. Fingertips and fingernails. Okay. Wet hands and arms using running warm water. Apply soap enough to build up a good lather. Follow the manufacturer's recommendation. Scrub hands and arms vigorously for 10 to 15 seconds. That's the first important part. Clean fingertips and under fingernails. That is the second thing to remember from this frame. Also, the wash water, even though it's not on this frame, has to be 100 degrees. Okay? 100 degrees. Dishwashing water has to be 110. Dry hands and arms using a single-use paper towel. Okay? No community cloths. No napkins from another room. There should be a dispenser with single-use paper towels right near your hand sink. You should also wash your hands after handling service animals or aquatic animals, changing tasks before beginning new tasks, leaving and returning to the kitchen prep area, and using electronic devices. If food handlers have touched food or food contact surfaces with unclean hands, dispose of the contaminated food, clean potentially contaminated equipment, and retrain or coach people not following proper hand washing procedures. Additional measures to prevent contamination: file ragged fingernails. They're harder to keep clean. Do not wear nail polish. Do not wear false fingernails. Okay, now new to the updates, they can be worn if the food handler wears single-use gloves. How a wound is covered depends on where it's located. Cover wounds on the hand or wrist with an impermeable cover, and then a single-use glove. Cover wounds on the arm with an impermeable cover such as bandage. Cover wounds on other parts of the body with a dry, durable, tight-fitting bandage. Okay? Single-use gloves should always be worn when handling ready-to-eat food. They are not required to be worn when washing produce and handling ready-to-eat ingredients for a dish that will be cooked. Wash and dry hands before putting gloves on. Make sure you have the correct glove size. Hold gloves by the edge when putting them on. Once gloves are on, check for rips or tears. Never blow into gloves. Never roll. Since food can be contaminated when touched with bare hands, do not handle ready-to-eat food with bare hands. Never handle ready-to-eat food with bare hands if you primarily serve a high-risk population. Certainly not allowed at all, but be especially cautious when you're serving a high-risk population. Foods may be handled with bare hands if the food is an ingredient in a dish that does not contain raw meat, seafood, or poultry, and is going to be cooked to at least 145. If the food is an ingredient in a dish containing raw meat, seafood, or poultry, the dish will be cooked to the required minimum internal temperature of the raw items. Do not wear hair accessories. Do not wear false eyelashes. Food handlers with facial hair should also wear beard restraints. To prevent contamination, change into work clothes at work if possible. Now, not a lot of places allow that, and I don't know that I would want to see somebody getting dressed out of a duffel bag, but in case it's on the test, this is how you answer it. Store street clothing and personal belongings in designated areas. Store dirty clothing away from food and prep areas in non-absorbent containers or in washable laundry bags. Provide proof that staff have been informed of the need to report illness. Signed statements that they will report illness should be done on orientation and included in their file. Documentation of completed training that includes the need to report illness. And post reminders to notify managers of the illness. By the time clock, anywhere conspicuous. Food handlers must report it if diagnosed with an illness from the following pathogens: norovirus, hepatitis A, Shigella, E. coli, Salmonella typhi, and non-typhoidal salmonella. This we call the Big Six. Okay, the Big Six. Signs of illness you should watch for: vomiting, excessive trips to the bathroom, yellowing of the skin, eyes, or fingernails. This is jaundice, and that's with hepatitis A. Cold sweats or chills indicating a fever, and persistent nasal discharge and sneezing. Restricting or excluding staff from medical conditions. The food handler has an infected wound or boil that is not properly covered. Restrict the food handler from working with exposed food, utensils, and equipment. They can cover it to go resume regular duties. The food handler has a sore throat with a fever. Restrict the food handler from working with exposed food, utensils, and equipment. Exclude the food handler from an operation if you primarily serve a high-risk population. A written release from a medical practitioner is required for returning to work. The food handler has persistent sneezing, coughing, or a runny nose with discharges from the eyes, nose, or mouth. Restrict the food handler from working with exposed food, utensils, and equipment. Exclude the food handler from the operation if they have any of these symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, or jaundice. Before returning to work, food handlers must have no symptoms for at least 24 hours, or a written release from medical practitioner. Jaundice. Okay? Jaundice, because it belongs to hepatitis A, before returning to work, they will need a written release from a medical practitioner and approval from the regulatory authority. This is very serious. It doesn't happen that often, but it causes quite a ruckus when it does. The food handler is vomiting and has diarrhea and has been diagnosed with an illness caused by one of these pathogens: norovirus, Shigella, non-typhoidal salmonella, or sugar toxin-producing E. coli. The food handler has been diagnosed with an illness caused by one of these pathogens: hepatitis or Salmonella typhi. Exclude the food handler from the operation. Okay, now we have to remember the key word here: it's going to be officially diagnosed to know that it was caused by these. Okay, so that's the difference.